He looked her in the eye and laughed, sliding a check for $5,000 across the mahogany table. "Take it," he sneered. "It's more money than you've ever seen in your life. Go find a nice, simple man who likes simple women." He signed the divorce papers with a flourish, convinced he was shedding dead weight. He had no idea that the pen he was holding was manufactured by a subsidiary of her family's company. He didn't know that the building they were sitting in belonged to her trust fund. And he certainly didn't know that by signing that paper, he wasn't gaining his freedom, he was signing his own death warrant. This is the story of Ethan Caldwell, and the day he divorced the heiress of the world's most secretive trillionaire empire. The air conditioning in the conference room of Sterling, Cooper and Ross was set to a sterile 68 degrees, but Ethan Caldwell was sweating. Not from nerves, never from nerves, but from the sheer anticipation of freedom. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Italian suit, a pitiful attempt to hide the smirk that kept threatening to break across his face. Across the expansive glass table sat Sarah. She looked exactly as she had for the last 5 years of their marriage, unremarkable. She wore a beige cardigan that had seen better days. Her hair pulled back in a loose, messy bun that screamed suburban housewife rather than CEO's wife. She was looking down at her hands, which were clasped tightly in her lap. No jewelry. Not even the wedding ring he had bought her. "Come on, Sarah," Ethan said, his voice dripping with a faux sympathy that was more insulting than shouting. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. My lawyer, Mr. Sterling, has been very generous with the terms." Arthur Sterling, a man whose hourly rate could feed a family of 4 for a month, nodded sharply. "Indeed. The prenuptial agreement you signed 5 years ago, Mrs. Caldwell, entitles you to very little. However Ethan is feeling, charitable. He is offering a lump sum of $50,000 to help you get back on your feet." Sarah didn't look up. She just stared at the polished wood of the table. Ethan leaned back, crossing his legs. He felt powerful. 5 years ago, when he was just a mid-level manager at a logistics firm, Sarah's quiet support and home-cooked meals were comforting. She was safe. But now he was the CEO of Caldwell Dynamics. He was closing deals in Tokyo and London. He was featured in Forbes' 40 Under 40. He needed a woman who looked good on a yacht, not one who looked like she was waiting for a coupons flyer in the mail. He needed Jessica. Jessica was 24, a model-turned-influencer, and she knew how to wear diamonds. Sarah. Ethan sighed, checking his Rolex. "I have a board meeting in an hour. Please, just sign the papers. You don't fit in this world anymore. You know it. I know it. Let's stop pretending." Finally, Sarah looked up. Her eyes were dry. There was no redness, no tears. There was something else in them, a flatness that Ethan mistook for defeat. "Is that what you think, Ethan?" she asked softly. "That I don't fit in your world? Look at you." Ethan laughed, gesturing vaguely at her outfit. "You're a nurse, Sarah. You wipe noses and change bedpans. I'm building the future of AI robotics. We're not on the same planet. I've outgrown you. It happens." He pulled a fountain pen from his breast pocket. It was a Mont Blanc limited edition. He loved that pen. He uncapped it and slid the divorce decree toward her. "Sign it. Take the 50 grand. Go back to Ohio or wherever your parents are from. Buy a small house. Find a nice mechanic. Be happy." Sarah reached out and took the document. She didn't pick up the cheap ballpoint pen the lawyer had provided. Instead, she reached into her battered tote bag and pulled out her own pen. Ethan almost laughed aloud. It looked like a simple, heavy black stick. No gold trim, no branding. Probably something she picked up at a drugstore. "I'll sign," Sarah said, her voice steady. "But I don't want your money, Ethan." "Don't be a martyr," Ethan snapped. "You need the money." "I really don't," she replied. She signed her name with fluid, elegant strokes. Sarah Caldwell. Then she paused, looked him dead in the eye, and crossed out Caldwell. Beside it, she wrote a name he hadn't seen since their marriage license, a name he had never bothered to Google because he assumed she came from poverty. Sarah Dubois. She slid the papers back. "Keep the 50,000, Ethan," she said, standing up. "You're going to need it for the legal fees coming your way when the audit hits." Ethan frowned. "What audit? What are you talking about?" Sarah didn't answer. She picked up her bag. "Goodbye, Ethan. I hope Jessica is worth half your company." "Oh wait, you don't own half the company, do you? You only have 15% equity. The investors own the rest." "How do you know about my equity split?" Ethan demanded, standing up. "I never discussed business with you." "You'd be surprised what you discuss when you think no one important is listening," she said. She walked to the door. As she reached for the handle, Arthur Sterling, the high-powered lawyer, suddenly went pale. He was staring at the signature on the papers. "Dubois," Sterling whispered, his voice trembling. "Mrs. Caldwell, are you related to the Dubois group?" Sarah turned back, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "Related, Mr. Sterling, I am the Dubois group." She walked out, leaving a silence in the room so heavy it felt like it could crush bones. Ethan looked at his lawyer. "Who the hell are the Dubois group? And why do you look like you just saw a ghost?" Sterling wiped sweat from his forehead. "Ethan, the Dubois group isn't a company. It's a sovereign private equity fund. They own the bank that holds your company's loans. They own the building we are standing in. They own everything." Ethan laughed nervously. "Sarah. My Sarah. She buys her clothes at Target. You're mistaken." But as he looked down at the signature, the bold, aristocratic loops of the D in Dubois, the first seed of terror planted itself in his gut. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like a descent into a new reality for Sarah. For 5 years, she had played the role of the supportive wife. She had met Ethan when he was a struggling junior analyst. She had fallen in love with his drive, his hunger. She had hidden her identity not to deceive him, but to protect him and to see if someone could love her for Sarah, not for the trillions attached to the Dubois name. Her father, Alexander Dubois, the patriarch of the European banking cartel that quietly dictated global economies, had warned her. He loves the climb, Sarah, not the view, and certainly not the person holding the ladder. She had proved her father right. When the elevator doors pinged open in the marble lobby, the transformation began. Sarah walked past the security desk. The guard, usually dismissive of the woman in the beige cardigan, suddenly straightened up. He tapped his earpiece. "Target is moving. Initiate Protocol 0. Sarah pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out onto the bustling New York street. The humidity hit her, but so did the familiar hum of power. A black Mercedes Maybach pulled up to the curb, ignoring the no stopping sign. The traffic police officer started to walk over, saw the diplomatic plates, and immediately turned around, pretending he saw nothing. A man in a sharp charcoal suit stepped out of the rear passenger side. He was older, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. It was Henry, her family's consigliere, and her personal protector since childhood. "Ms. Sarah," Henri said, bowing his head slightly. He didn't look at her clothes. He looked at her eyes. "Is it done?" "It's done, Henri," Sarah said, sliding into the leather interior that smelled of lavender and old money. "Did he take the bait?" "He signed. He mocked me. He offered me $50,000. Henri chuckled darkly as he closed the door and settled into the front seat. $50,000. That wouldn't cover the fuel for your jet for a weekend. The insolence is almost impressive." "Where to, madame?" the driver asked. "The penthouse," Sarah said, leaning back and pulling the pins out of her hair, letting the golden waves fall over her shoulders. "And Henri, get me a secure line to the board of directors at Caldwell Dynamics." Henri tapped on a tablet. "Already done. I took the liberty of freezing their credit lines 10 minutes ago. The notification should be hitting his inbox right about now." Back in the conference room, Ethan's phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it began to vibrate incessantly, a swarm of angry bees in his pocket. "Ignore it," he muttered, still staring at the divorce papers. "Sterling explained this to me. Sarah is a nurse. Her dad was a librarian or something." "Did you ever meet him?" Sterling asked, typing furiously on his laptop. "No, he died before we met. She said he left her a small collection of books." "A collection of books." Sterling repeated, his face grey. He turned the laptop screen toward Ethan. "Ethan, look at this." Ethan squinted at the screen. It was a wiki page, but one of those locked corporate intel pages. House of Dubois, assets under management. Undisclosed estimated $4 trillion. Key figures. Alexander Dubois, deceased. Sole heir. Sarah Evelyn Dubois. Below the text was a grainy paparazzi photo from 10 years ago. It showed a young woman stepping off a yacht in Monaco, flanked by royalty. She was wearing diamonds, a couture gown, and sunglasses. But the jawline, the nose. It was Sra. "No," Ethan whispered. "This isn't real. She cooked pot roast. She clipped coupons. Rich people are eccentric, Ethan. They do that to test people," Sterling yelled, losing his composure. "You just divorced the richest woman in the Western Hemisphere, and you offered her 50 grand. Do you know what this means?" Ethan's phone rang again. This time he looked at the screen. It was his CFO, Mike Ross. Ethan answered, his hand shaking. "Mike, not a good time. Ethan," Mike was screaming. "What the hell is going on? Our corporate accounts just locked up. Chase Goldman, everybody. I just got a call from the Relentless Acquisition Department at Vanguard. They said our credit facility has been revoked due to a conflict of interest with the primary stakeholder." "Who is the primary stakeholder?" Ethan demanded, loosening his tie. "We don't have a single majority shareholder." "We do now," Mike yelled. "A holding company called Aurelius LLC just bought out the 3 major venture capital firms that backed us. They bought the debt, Ethan. They own the debt, and they are calling it in. Immediately." "Who is Aurelius LLC?" "I don't know, but the fax came through, signed by the director." "Read me the name, Mike." There was a pause on the line. "It's signed S. Dubois." Ethan dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. The room spun. Aurelius. Sarah used to read Marcus Aurelius before bed. He had made fun of her for reading boring philosophy. "She's killing the company." Ethan realized, his voice hollow. "She's not suing me. She's deleting me." Sterling slammed his laptop shut. "Ethan, I can't represent you anymore." "What?" Ethan stared at him. "We have a retainer. Conflict of interest, Sterling said, grabbing his briefcase. My firm. We lease our offices in London and Hong Kong from the Dubois estate. If I fight her, we lose our leases. I'm sorry, Ethan. You're on your own. The lawyer bolted from the room, leaving Ethan alone with the signed divorce papers and the deafening silence of a life that was rapidly imploding. He ran to the window, looking down 40 stories to the street below. He saw the black Maybach pulling away from the curb, merging effortlessly into traffic as other cars moved out of its way. Sarah, he whispered. But the woman in the cardigan was gone. The enemy had awakened. Ethan sat in the back of an Uber Black. His corporate driver had mysteriously gone off duty 20 minutes ago, staring at the passing lights of Manhattan. His phone was a brick of bad news. Emails from suppliers cancelling contracts, texts from board members demanding emergency meetings, and 3 missed calls from his mother asking why her supplementary credit card had been declined at the grocery store. He needed a drink. He needed Jessica. He arrived at Le Coucou, one of the city's most exclusive French restaurants. This was where he and Jessica celebrated his wins. Tonight he was supposed to be celebrating his freedom. Jessica was already seated at their usual corner table. She was stunning, wearing a red silk dress that hugged her figure, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. She looked expensive. That was the problem with Jessica, Ethan realized for the first time. She looked expensive, whereas Sarah just looked present. Finally, Jessica beamed as he approached, offering her cheek for a kiss. I ordered the 82 Petrus. I figured since you saved $50,000 by not giving it to the dowdy ex-wife, we could splurge. Ethan sank into the chair, the velvet feeling like sandpaper against his nerves. The waiter poured the wine. It cost $4,000 a bottle. Ethan felt nauseous. Jessica, Ethan started, his voice tight. We need to talk. Oh, don't be so serious. She laughed, sipping the wine. Did she cry? Did she beg God? I bet she looked pathetic in those awful cardigans. I'm so glad you're finally done with that charity case. She didn't cry, Ethan said, staring at the white tablecloth. And she didn't take the money. Jessica paused, the glass halfway to her lips. She didn't take it. Is she stupid? What is she going to live on? Ethan looked up, his eyes bloodshot. Jessica, she's not who we thought she was. What does that mean? Is she secretly a psycho? She's Sarah Dubois. Jessica blinked. Okay. And I'm Jessica Miller. What's your point? No, Jessica, Dubois, as in the Dubois Group, as in the people who own the building we are sitting in right now, as in the people who own the bank that finances my company. Jessica frowned, a look of genuine confusion on her face. Wait, you mean Sarah, your wife, who drives a 2015 Honda Civic, is rich? She's not rich, Ethan whispered, leaning in. She's a trillionaire, or her family is, and she just declared war on me. Jessica stared at him for a long moment. Then she burst out laughing. It was a loud, sharp sound that made heads turn. Ethan, honey, you're stressed. She giggled, reaching for his hand. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Sarah, that mouse, she probably lied to scare you. It's a classic manipulation tactic. My credit lines are frozen, Jessica. The company accounts are locked. So call the bank. She snapped, her patience thinning. Fix it. You're the CEO. Stop acting like a victim. The waiter arrived with the check for the wine, placing it discreetly on the table. Ethan grabbed his black Amex Centurion card, the black card he was so proud of, and slapped it on the tray. I'm trying to tell you, Ethan hissed. It's real. The waiter returned 30 seconds later, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Caldwell. The card was declined. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. Try it again. It's an unlimited limit. We tried it twice, sir. The code returned is card stolen, lost. Confiscate immediately. Jessica's eyes widened. She looked at the card, then at Ethan. The dynamic at the table shifted instantly. The admiration in her eyes evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculating assessment. Do you have another card? She asked sharply. I have my personal visa. He handed it over. The waiter returned. Declined, sir. Silence stretched between them. The bustling noise of the restaurant seemed to fade into a high-pitched ringing in Ethan's ears. You have no money, Jessica stated. It wasn't a question. It's temporary, Ethan pleaded. It's just a hold. I'll sort it out in the morning. Sarah is just playing games. Jessica stood up. She picked up her clutch. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. Where are you going? Ethan asked, panic rising. I'm not doing this, Ethan, she said, smoothing her dress. I signed up for the CEO of Caldwell Dynamics, not a guy who can't pay for dinner. Call me when your cards work. Jessica, you can't just leave me here. She looked down at him, her expression icy. You left your wife of 5 years because you thought you could do better. Don't act surprised when karma walks in wearing high heels. Handle the bill, Ethan. She walked out. Ethan was left alone. He looked at the waiter, then at the $4,000 bottle of wine, mostly full. I need to make a phone call, Ethan stammered. I'll have security wait with you, sir, the waiter said politely, but his eyes were hard. Ethan pulled out his phone. He didn't call his lawyer. He didn't call his parents. He dialed the one number he had deleted from his contacts 2 hours ago. Sarah. It rang once, twice. Then a voice picked up. But it wasn't Sarah. Mr. Caldwell, came the smooth, deep voice of Henri. Ms. Dubois is currently indisposed. She is having a late supper with the Prince of Liechtenstein. Can I take a message? Let me speak to her, Ethan shouted, not caring about the staring diners. Tell her she can't do this. This is illegal. Financial abuse. Mr. Caldwell, Henri said, his voice dropping an octave. You signed a waiver of rights to all marital assets in exchange for a clean break. As for the company, you should really read the fine print of your initial angel investment contract from 5 years ago. The one with Blue Heron Ventures. What about it? Blue Heron is a shell company for Ms. Dubois's charitable trust. She didn't just support you emotionally, Ethan. She funded you. Every dollar. She made you. And as the contract states, the primary investor reserves the right to liquidate assets in the event of gross mismanagement or moral turpitude. Ethan couldn't breathe. Sarah hadn't just been his wife. She had been his boss for 5 years, and he had treated her like a servant. Henri, Ethan begged, his voice cracking. Please, I'm at a restaurant. My cards. Yes, we received the notification, Henri said calmly. It appears you are experiencing a liquidity crisis. Perhaps you should try washing dishes. I hear it builds character. Goodbye, Mr. Caldwell. The line went dead. Ethan looked up at the security guard looming over him. Is there a problem, sir? The guard asked. Ethan put his head in his hands. Yes, I think my life just ended. The next morning, Ethan didn't go to the office. He was summoned. He had spent the night sleeping in his office on the leather sofa because the electronic key fob to his penthouse apartment had stopped working. The doorman, a man Ethan had never tipped in 3 years, had simply shrugged and said, Building management orders, Mr. Caldwell. The lease has been terminated. Now wearing the same wrinkled suit from the day before, Ethan walked into the boardroom of Caldwell Dynamics. It was full, but not with his usual board members. The tech bros and Silicon Valley investors were gone. In their place sat 6 men and women in dark, severe suits. They sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table, looking like undertakers waiting for a body. At the head of the table sat a man Ethan recognized from magazine covers, though he had never dared to dream of meeting him. Arthur Blackwood, the Grim Reaper of Wall Street, a man who specialized in hostile takeovers and corporate dismantling. "Sit down, Mr. Caldwell," Blackwood said, not looking up from a file he was reading. Ethan slumped into a chair at the far end of the table. "Where is my board? Where is Mike? Mike resigned this morning. Smart lad," Blackwood said, finally looking up. His eyes were grey and lifeless. "As for the board, they have sold their controlling interests to Aurelius LLC as of 4:00 a.m. this morning. You are looking at the new ownership. You can't do this," Ethan said, trying to summon some of his old CEO bravado. "I founded this company. My code is the backbone of the platform. Your code," Blackwood corrected, "is proprietary property of the company, and the company belongs to us. Now let's discuss your exit." "I'm not leaving," Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "I have a contract," Blackwood signaled to an assistant who slid a single piece of paper toward Ethan. "You have a moral clause in your employment agreement, Ethan. It allows for immediate termination without severance if the CEO engages in conduct that brings disrepute to the firm. We have evidence that you used company funds, specifically the client entertainment budget, to finance a 2-year affair with a Miss Jessica Miller. Dinners, hotels, jewelry." "Everyone does that," Ethan protested. "That's standard business." "It is embezzlement," Blackwood stated coldly. "And the primary shareholder, Ms. Dubois, takes a very dim view of infidelity funded by her money." Ethan felt the trap snap shut. Sarah had known. She had known about Jessica for 2 years. She had watched him swipe the company card, knowing it was effectively her money, and she had said nothing. She was waiting, collecting receipts, building the coffin. "So that's it?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. "She destroys my career because of a divorce." Blackwood leaned forward. "No, Mr. Caldwell. She isn't destroying your career. She is simply removing her protection. You see, without the Dubois capital backing you, you are insolvent. We audited your work. Your revolutionary AI code is mediocre at best. The only reason this company succeeded was because Blue Heron Ventures' Ms. Dubois kept pumping money into it to cover your losses. She wanted you to feel successful. The humiliation was worse than the bankruptcy. Ethan realized he hadn't been a self-made man. He had been a kept man, a pet project. "She pitied me," Ethan whispered. "She loved you," Blackwood corrected, "and she wanted you to be the man you pretended to be. But you weren't. You were small. And now you are unemployed." Blackwood stood up. "Security will escort you out. You are barred from the premises. Your company car has been repossessed. Good day, Mr. Caldwell." 2 large guards stepped forward. Ethan stood up, his legs shaking. "Tell her," Ethan said, his voice breaking, "tell her I need to speak to her. Ms. Dubois is preparing for the Winter Solstice Gala tonight," Blackwood said, checking his watch. "I doubt she has time for past investments." Ethan was marched out of the building, past his staring employees, past the receptionist, who wouldn't make eye contact, and thrown out onto the sidewalk. He stood there holding a cardboard box containing a stapler and a framed photo of himself. It started to rain. The Winter Solstice Gala was the event of the New York social calendar. It was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Tickets cost $50,000 a plate, and even if you had the money, you couldn't just buy one. You had to be invited. Ethan Caldwell stood outside the police barricades, soaked to the bone. He wasn't on the list, but he knew he had to get in. He had to see Sarah. If he could just talk to her, beg, maybe she would show mercy. He spotted a familiar face getting out of a limo. It was Julian Thorne, a tech rival Ethan used to drink with. "Julian!" Ethan shouted, rushing to the velvet rope. Julian turned, saw the disheveled wet man in the wrinkled suit, and frowned. "Ethan, Jesus, man. What happened to you? I heard the news." "Julian, get me in," Ethan pleaded, grabbing Julian's arm over the barrier. "I need to talk to some investors. I can turn this around. I just need one meeting." Julian looked uncomfortable. He peeled Ethan's fingers off his tuxedo. "Look, Ethan, you're toxic right now. Blackwood sent out a memo. Anyone who does business with you gets blacklisted by the Dubois Group. I can't risk it. They own my supply chain." "Please," Ethan begged, "just as a +1. I'll stay in the back." Julian sighed, looking at the desperate man who used to be arrogant. "Fine, but you keep your mouth shut and fix your tie. You look like a homeless person." Ethan slipped past security as Julian's guest. He rushed to the bathroom, dried his hair under the hand dryer, and tried to smooth out his suit. He looked gaunt, haunted. But he was in. The Temple of Dendur was transformed into a glittering wonderland of ice sculptures and diamonds. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old money. Ethan grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing tray, downing it in one gulp to steady his nerves. He scanned the room. He saw senators, movie stars, oligarchs, and then the room went silent. The chatter stopped. The music faded. All eyes turned toward the grand staircase. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed, "the chairwoman of the evening, Miss Sarah Dubois." Ethan looked up, and his breath stopped. Descending the stairs was a woman who looked like a queen. She wore a gown of midnight blue velvet that shimmered like the night sky cut low to reveal a diamond necklace that must have been worth more than Ethan's entire company. Her hair, usually messy, was styled in sleek Hollywood waves. Her posture was regal commanding. But it was her face that struck him. The shyness was gone. Her eyes swept over the room with a cool, benevolent indifference. She wasn't hiding anymore. Ethan felt a physical pain in his chest. This was the woman he had called simple. This was the woman he had told to find a mechanic. She reached the bottom of the stairs, and the room erupted. People didn't just clap. They bowed. Men who Ethan considered titans of industry were rushing to kiss her hand. "Sarah," Ethan yelled, the alcohol and desperation taking over. He pushed through the crowd. "Sarah!" People gasped, stepping back as the disheveled man stumbled toward the heiress. Security guards started to move in, but Sarah raised a hand, stopping them. She turned to face him. The crowd formed a circle, watching the train wreck unfold. Ethan stopped 3 feet from her. Up close, she was even more intimidating. She smelled of jasmine and power. "Ethan," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was calm, disappointed. "You shouldn't be here." "Sarah, please," Ethan panted. "We need to talk. This has gone too far. You've ruined me." "I haven't done anything to you, Ethan," she replied softly. I simply stopped holding you up. You fell on your own. I was your husband, he shouted, tears mixing with the rain on his face. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything to me, Sarah said, and for a second her voice wavered. I hid who I was because I wanted to be sure you loved me. Not the money, not the power. Just Sarah. She took a step closer, her eyes searching his. And for 5 years I waited. I waited for you to ask me about my day. I waited for you to be kind when you were stressed. I waited for you to look at me the way you looked at that reflection of yourself in the mirror. But you never did. I can change, Ethan sobbed, falling to his knees. The humiliation was total. He was kneeling before her in front of the New York elite. I'll sign a post, Nup. I won't touch the money. Just take me back. Please, I have nothing. Sarah looked down at him. There was no malice in her face, only a profound sadness. She looked at him like one looks at a wounded animal that cannot be saved. You had everything, Ethan, she whispered loud enough for the silent room to hear. You had a woman who would have burned the world down for you, but you wanted a model and a sports car. She signaled to Henri, who was standing in the shadows. Remove him, she said quietly. Gently. He's had a hard day. Sarah. No, Sarah, Ethan screamed as 2 massive guards hoisted him up by his arms. As they dragged him away, kicking and screaming, Sarah didn't look back. She turned to the crowd, composed herself, and smiled. Shall we proceed with the auction? She asked. The crowd applauded, turning their backs on Ethan Caldwell. He was dragged out the side door and thrown into the alley behind the museum. He landed in a puddle mud, splattering his face. He lay there for a moment, staring up at the rain. He reached into his pocket and felt the only thing he had left. The fountain pen she had given him for their first anniversary. It was cheap. Plastic. He uncapped it. It was dry. Suddenly a pair of shiny black dress shoes stepped into his field of vision. Ethan looked up. It was Henry. The old man was holding an umbrella, looking down at Ethan with a mixture of pity and disgust. Ms. Dubois wanted you to have this, Henri said. He dropped an envelope onto Ethan's chest. Ethan sat up, shivering, and tore it open. Inside was a check. It was for $50,000, and a note written in that elegant, looping handwriting. To help you get back on your feet. Find a nice, simple life. S. Dubois. Ethan stared at the check. The exact amount he had offered her to leave. The irony tasted like ash in his mouth. He looked up to say something, but Henri was already gone. The heavy steel door of the museum slammed shut, locking the warmth and the light inside, leaving Ethan alone in the cold, dark alley. He laughed then, a broken, jagged sound. He had signed the papers mocking her, and now the ink was dry, and the story was over. 6 months had passed since the night Ethan Caldwell was thrown into the mud outside the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The $50,000 check Sarah had given him was gone, swallowed not by luxury, but by debts he hadn't known existed. When the Dubois Group blacklisted him, they didn't just stop him from getting a CEO job, they made him radioactive. His credit score was decimated, his assets seized by creditors, and his reputation shattered by a series of leaked articles detailing his incompetence. Now Ethan lived in a cramped, moldy studio apartment in Newark, New Jersey. The man who once wore bespoke Italian suits now wore a grease-stained uniform with the name Eddie stitched on the pocket. He worked the night shift at a logistics warehouse, ironically moving boxes for a company that competed with the empire he used to run. It was 4:00 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday when Ethan clocked out. His hands were blistered, his back ached, and his spirit was broken. He walked to his rusted 2008 sedan, the only car he could afford with cash, and found a man leaning against the driver's door. The man was tall, gaunt, and dressed in a trench coat that cost more than Ethan's entire year of rent. He was smoking a thin cigar, the embers glowing orange, in the dark parking lot. "Excuse me," Ethan grunted, too tired to be polite. "You're leaning on my car." The man smiled. It was a predatory smile, all teeth and no warmth. "Ethan Caldwell, the man who threw away a kingdom for a trinket." Ethan froze. He hadn't heard his full name spoken with that kind of reverence or mockery in months. "Who are you?" "My name is Conrad Voss," the stranger said, flicking the cigar ash onto the wet pavement. "And I am the only friend you have left in this world." Ethan scoffed, unlocking his door. "I don't have friends, Mr. Voss, and unless you're here to offer me a shift supervisor position, I'm going home to sleep." Voss chuckled softly. "I can offer you something better than sleep, Ethan. I can offer you retribution." Ethan paused, his hand on the door handle. The word hung in the damp air. Retribution. Sarah Dubois destroyed my life, too. Voss said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Her father Alexander stole my family's shipping empire 30 years ago. He crushed my father, just like Sarah crushed you. They are monsters, Ethan. They feed on people like us." "She's a trillionaire," Ethan said bitterly. "She's untouchable. I tried to talk to her. I tried to apologize. It's over." "It's only over if you stay on your knees," Voss countered. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "You think you know why she hid her identity? You think it was a romantic test? You are so naive." Voss shoved the envelope into Ethan's chest. "Read this. It's the patent filing for the AI code you wrote, the one you thought belonged to Caldwell Dynamics." Ethan hesitated, then ripped the envelope open under the flickering streetlight. He scanned the documents. His eyes widened. The patent for the core algorithm, his life's work, wasn't filed under Caldwell Dynamics. It was filed 5 years ago, a week after his wedding under Dubois Aurelius Technologies. "She didn't just fund you, Ethan," Voss hissed. "She stole your intellectual property before you even wrote the final line of code. The prenup you signed, it gave her ownership of anything you created during the marriage. That AI, it's currently generating $40 billion a year for her European servers. She didn't divorce you because you were a bad husband. She divorced you because the product was finished and she didn't need the developer anymore." The world tilted on its axis. The sadness and regret Ethan had felt for 6 months evaporated, replaced by a white-hot rage. He hadn't just been a bad husband. He had been a victim. A mark. She had played the long con. "40 billion, Ethan whispered. "And you got 50,000, Voss added, twisting the knife. "A tip, like you were a waiter." Ethan looked up at Voss, his eyes hard for the first time since the divorce. "What do you want?" "There is a loophole," Voss said, his eyes gleaming. "The patent filing requires the signature of the primary inventor to be renewed every 5 years. That renewal is coming up in 3 days. If you contest the signature, if you testify that you were coerced or defrauded, the patent becomes void. Her stock crashes. The Dubois empire loses its crown jewel." "I can't afford a lawyer," Ethan said. "I have an army of lawyers." Voss smiled. "I just need the man. I need you to walk into the International Trade Court in Geneva and tell the truth. Do this, and I will give you 10% of the recovered assets." $4 billion. Ethan looked at the grease on his hands. He looked at the rusted car. He thought of Sarah's cold, pitying stare at the gala. "When do we leave?" Ethan asked. "Tonight," Voss said, opening the back door of a limousine that had silently pulled up behind them. "Welcome back to the game, Mr. Caldwell." Geneva, Switzerland was a city of cold lakes and colder money. Ethan sat in a suite at the Hotel President Wilson, looking at a reflection he barely recognized. Conrad Voss had cleaned him up. The beard was gone, the haircut sharp. He was wearing a suit that cost more than his old company car. But behind the eyes, there was a hollowness that hadn't been there before. For 3 days, Voss's legal team had prepped him. They showed him documents, emails, and financial trails that painted Sarah not as a neglected wife, but as a corporate shark who had systematically siphoned his genius for her own gain. Every late night she spent at the hospital meetings with patent attorneys. Every time she encouraged him to keep working on the code, she was pushing him to finish the product so she could seize it. Ethan drank the narrative like water. It was easier to believe she was a villain than to accept he was a failure. "Tomorrow is the hearing," Voss said, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. He stood by the bulletproof window overlooking Lake Geneva. "Sarah will be there. She thinks this is a routine renewal. She doesn't know you're coming." "She'll have Henri," Ethan said, his hand tightening on the glass. "That old man is dangerous." "Henri is a dog," Voss dismissed. "Dogs can be put down. What matters is you. Are you ready to look her in the eye and take back what is yours?" "I'm ready." Ethan lied. In truth, a seed of doubt had begun to sprout in his gut. The documents Voss showed him were convincing, but they were complex, redacted. And Voss himself, there was a cruelty in the man that made Ethan uneasy. Voss didn't just want to win. He wanted Sarah obliterated. He talked about the Dubois family with a fanaticism that bordered on madness. That night, unable to sleep, Ethan sat by the fireplace. He picked up the tablet Voss had left on the coffee table. It was unlocked. Ethan knew he shouldn't snoop. But old habits died hard. He opened the file directory. He ignored the legal briefs and found a folder marked Operation Icarus. He clicked it. It wasn't a legal strategy. It was a hit list. There were blueprints of the Dubois estate, schedules of Sarah's movements, and then a document that made Ethan's blood freeze. Memorandum of Understanding between Conrad Voss and the Voronov Syndicate. Subject: liquidating the Dubois asset. Details upon the voiding of the AI patent. The Dubois stock protection protocols will disable for 24 hours. During this window, Voronov mercenaries will initiate a kinetic strike on the Geneva courthouse. Target S. Dubois. Primary objective elimination. Ethan dropped the tablet. This wasn't about a lawsuit. This wasn't about money. Voss was using Ethan to lure Sarah out of her fortress, to distract her legal team and security with a patent dispute so he could kill her. The patent theft story was a fabrication, a lure. Voss needed Ethan to be the bait. Ethan stood up, his heart hammering against his ribs. He hated Sarah for hiding the truth. He hated her for the humiliation. But he didn't want her dead. And he certainly didn't want to be an accessory to murder. He moved to the door, but it opened before he could touch the handle. 2 massive men in tactical gear stood there. Behind them was Voss, still smiling, but the smile no longer reached his eyes. "Going somewhere, Ethan?" Voss asked softly. "You're going to kill her," Ethan whispered, backing away. "The patent. It's all a lie. The patent is real enough to get her into the courtroom." Voss shrugged, stepping into the room. But yes, the endgame is finality. The Dubois family destroyed my father. I will not just take their money. I will end their bloodline. I won't do it, Ethan said. I won't testify. Oh, you will, Voss said, nodding to the guards. One of them pulled out a syringe. We have ways of ensuring compliance. Besides, you don't need to speak much. Just sit there, look angry, distract Henri. My men will handle the rest. The guard lunged. Ethan tried to fight. He threw a heavy crystal ashtray, striking one guard in the temple, but he was a coder, not a fighter. The second guard tackled him, pinning him to the plush carpet. The needle went into his neck. Darkness rushed in. The last thing Ethan heard was Voss's voice. Make sure he looks presentable for court. We have a show to put on. Ethan woke up in a holding cell behind the Grand Tribunal of Geneva. His head was pounding, his limbs heavy. He was dressed in his suit, sitting on a bench. The door opened. A corrupt bailiff, paid by Voss, grabbed his arm. It's time, Mr. Caldwell. He was marched down a marble hallway. He tried to speak, to yell, but his tongue felt thick, likely a side effect of the drug. He was groggy, pliable. They pushed him through heavy oak doors into the courtroom. It was majestic. High ceilings, murals of justice, and a silence that weighed tons. On the right side sat the Dubois legal team, an army of 20 lawyers, and in the center of them, Sarah. She wore a white suit, sharp and immaculate. She looked tired, her face pale, but her eyes were steel. Beside her stood Henri, scanning the room like a radar. On the left side, Conrad Voss sat looking the picture of righteous indignation. He patted the empty chair beside him. Sit, Voss hissed, as Ethan was deposited in the chair. Remember, one wrong move, and my sniper in the gallery puts a bullet in your spine. Then he shoots her. Ethan looked up at the gallery. It was packed with press and spectators. He couldn't see a sniper, but he knew Voss wasn't bluffing. The High Judge banged his gavel. Case 90221, Dubois Aurelius versus Caldwell. Challenge of patent validity. The proceedings began. Voss's lead lawyer stood up, spinning a tale of woe. He painted Ethan as the brilliant, downtrodden genius, and Sarah as the Black Widow. Ethan stared across the aisle. Sarah was looking at him. She wasn't looking at him with anger. She was looking at him with confusion. She knew the patent story was fake. She knew she had funded him fairly. She was trying to figure out why he was doing this. Then her eyes narrowed. She looked at his dilated pupils. She looked at the way he was gripping the table, his knuckles white. She leaned over and whispered to Henri. Henri stiffened. He slowly turned his head, not looking at Ethan, but scanning the upper gallery. Mr. Caldwell, the judge boomed. Please stand and state your claim. Do you assert that your signature on the assignment of rights was forged or coerced? This was it. The moment. Voss dug his shoe into Ethan's ankle under the table. Say it, he whispered. Say yes. Ethan stood up. His legs wobbled. He gripped the podium. The microphone screeched slightly. He looked at Sarah. For 5 years he had been selfish. He had been blind. He had signed divorce papers to get rid of her. And now he was about to sign her death warrant. You had a woman who would have burned the world down for you, she had said. Ethan took a deep breath. The drug haze was lifting, replaced by adrenaline. Mr. Caldwell, the judge pressed. Ethan looked directly at Sarah. He saw the sniper in his peripheral vision, a glint of a lens in the shadows of the upper balcony. No, Ethan said. The courtroom gasped. Voss froze. "Excuse me," the judge asked. "My signature was not coerced," Ethan said, his voice gaining strength. "Sarah Dubois. Sarah Dubois is the most honorable woman I have ever known. She funded me. She supported me. This lawsuit is a lie." Voss lunged for him. "He's drugged. He's unstable." Ethan dodged Voss's hand and shouted, pointing at the balcony. "Henri Top, left balcony, shooter." Henri didn't hesitate. Before the sentence was finished, the old man had drawn a suppressed pistol from beneath his jacket in a court of law and fired 3 shots toward the shadows of the gallery. Chaos erupted. Screams filled the air. A body tumbled from the balcony, a rifle clattering to the floor below. "Protective circle!" Henri roared. 4 undercover guards in the audience leaped over the railing surrounding Sarah with Kevlar briefcases. Voss, realizing his plan had failed, pulled a knife from his sleeve and lunged at Sarah across the aisle. He was desperate, suicidal. Ethan didn't think. He didn't calculate the ROI. He just moved. He threw himself across the aisle, intercepting Voss. The knife that was meant for Sarah's neck plunged into Ethan's shoulder. Pain, white and blinding, exploded in his body. Ethan tackled Voss to the ground, punching him, screaming with all the rage of the last 6 months. "Don't you touch her! Don't you touch her!" Security swarmed them. Voss was dragged away, bloodied and laughing maniacally. Ethan lay on the marble floor, gasping for air, blood pooling around his shoulder. The ceiling spun. Then a face appeared above him. Sarah. She wasn't looking at him like a pity case anymore. She was crying. She pressed her hands against his wound, her white suit staining red with his blood. "You idiot!" she sobbed. "You absolute idiot!" I didn't sign," Ethan wheezed, smiling through the pain. "I didn't take the deal." "Why?" she asked, her tears falling on his face. "Why did you save me?" "Because," Ethan whispered, his vision fading to black. "You were right. I was a poor man. I wanted to be rich. Just for a minute." He closed his eyes. The recovery took 3 months. When Ethan walked out of the private clinic in the Swiss Alps, his arm was in a sling and he walked with a slight limp. He found a black car waiting for him. Not a Maybach. A simple, sturdy Range Rover. Henri was the driver. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked. "Jail. Ms. Dubois declined to press charges for your involvement with Voss." Henri said, his voice lacking its usual iciness. "Considering you saved her life, she considers the debt paid." They drove in silence for an hour, winding through the mountains until they reached a small, picturesque village. Henri stopped in front of a cozy, timber-framed cottage with a view of the valley. It was beautiful, simple. "This is yours," Henri said, handing him a set of keys. "The deed is in your name. There is a workshop in the back, fully stocked. Tools, engines, old motorcycles, just like you used to talk about before you decided you wanted to be a CEO." Ethan took the keys. "And Sarah. Ms. Dubois is in Singapore, running the world." Henri paused. "She wanted you to know that she forgives you, but she cannot forget. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. But that doesn't mean you can't build a new house." Henri got back into the car. "Wait," Ethan said. "Did she leave a note?" Henri smiled, a genuine smile this time. "No note, Mr. Caldwell. Just the keys. She figured you were done with paperwork." Ethan watched the car drive away. He turned and looked at the cottage. He walked to the door and unlocked it. Inside it smelled of pine and sawdust. It was quiet. It was peaceful. He walked to the back workshop. There was an old 1960s Triumph motorcycle on the lift waiting to be restored. Ethan Caldwell took off his sling. He picked up a wrench. He felt the weight of the cold steel in his hand. It felt real. It felt better than a Mont Blanc pen. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a CEO. He was alone. But for the first time in his life, as he looked out the window at the mountains, Ethan Caldwell felt like a rich man. Ethan Caldwell's journey proves that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. He wanted the world, but he couldn't handle the woman who owned it. In the end, his redemption didn't come from money or power, but from a single act of selfless courage. He didn't get the girl back because real life isn't a fairy tale. But he got his soul back. And maybe, just maybe, that's worth more than $1 trillion. What do you think? Did Sarah let him off too easy? Or did Ethan finally earn his peace? Let me know in the comments below. If this story hooked you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more dramatic tales of betrayal and redemption.